Have you ever played hooky before? You're supposed to be at school. Somebody's seeing a guilty laughter. I see it. I hear it right now. Or you're supposed to be at school, or maybe you're supposed to be at an appointment, and you just decide it's such a beautiful day, and I am going to go out in the field with the butterflies, and I'm playing hooky today. Well, sometimes playing hooky might be good, but I decided one day that I was going to play hooky from church. Okay? I'm just not going to go to church today. I wasn't feeling it. I was a student at Walla Walla Adventist University, then Walla Walla College, and I had gone to church, and you know, everybody had a tie on. I didn't want to wear a tie. Everybody had nice looking duds on, and the ladies were all dressed up, and I was like, I am not into that. I had gotten into this thing of like, I'm wearing jeans to church if I go to church. So, but that just wasn't happening. At the university church, it was like, you know, and I was starting to get judgmental. I was like, what is this, a fashion show? We're here to worship God. You know, does God care if we have fancy threads on or not? You know, so I was getting an attitude. Maybe a typical attitude for a college kid, but I was like, you know, and there's always a good side. When a young person is questioning things, don't be too critical. Because doesn't God want it to be a matter of the heart, not a matter of show? So I had a point, didn't I? Of course I had a point. I wanted it to be real. And I saw Jesus not necessarily as somebody with all the big tassels of the Pharisees. I saw him as like dirty. You know, he was dusty. He was traveling. He was doing real ministry. You know, maybe his hands were a little bit, you know, soiled from hard work, you know, when he was touching and healing people, you know. So I was thinking of, you know, I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to be, well, anyway, so I decided I had good enough reason to just not go to church. I just didn't want to go. And I had a mountain bike, and I saw the Blue Mountains, the beauty of springtime, late spring in Washington State, and I was like, you know, I'm going to go be real with God. I'm going to go out in the mountains by myself with my mountain bike. Now, is it a good idea to go out by yourself, spending time in nature with God? Is that a good idea? Mm-hmm. It's a great idea. And I assumed that God would be thrilled to death to have me out there. And maybe he would have something special for me. Well, he did have something special for me for sure. So I was. You figured it out. That was a hard one. So I was biking up these firebreak roads up into the Blue Mountains of eastern Washington, and we have the Green Mountains here. They have the Blue Mountains over there. So I was biking up there, and I came up over a little knoll, and there were these two little baby cubs, and they were so cute. One was brown, one was black. And they were tussling with each other and playing around, and I was like, oh, I've never seen baby cubs in the middle of the wild like this. This is exciting. Maybe if I get really, really close, I can touch them, you know? So I got off my bike, and I was walking up, you know, and it was so exciting, you know, getting closer and closer to these little baby cubs, until I saw the bushes above the cubs start to move, and I was like, ah! And then I never saw the mother bear, but I saw those bushes moving, and I knew when they're cubs, there's undoubtedly mother bear. And of course, all the pictures of mother bears that have been told me. So I jumped on my Trek mountain bike, and I peeled out, and I was flying down those roads. And as I was flying down those roads to get out of there as quick as I could, I ran into a group. Now, the week before, I had gone to a Bible study, and it was not a Seventh-day Adventist Bible study. I had gone to this Bible study after a concert of a guy named Ray Boltz. Have you ever heard of Ray Boltz before? He's a Christian singer. There was a song back in the 1980s called Watch the Lamb. That was a very, very famous Christian song. And it was the first song I ever sang at summer camp. And it was by Ray Boltz. And he had many beautiful songs that he had written. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. That's Ray Boltz. So these are songs that, whether you know who it was or not, he contributed what I consider to be very inspiring songs. Anyway, he had come and he was singing, and it was so nice. And there were people, a bunch of the Adventist University kids were there, and a bunch of other young people that loved the Lord were there. And so after the concert, there was a group of Pentecostal kids who were having a Bible study, and they wanted us to come. And so we came. And we were there, and they were very passionate and very emotional, and they were speaking in tongues. And then they wanted to know about the Adventist church. They didn't know too much about it, even though there was a big Adventist university there. They just hadn't had much contact. And so I had shared with them a little bit about the Adventist faith. And I remember talking about it. I said, I love how passionate you guys are about Christ. And I love how it's very emotional for you, and it's very heartfelt for you. But the Seventh-day Adventist Church, if you could compare a relationship with God to a marriage relationship, you have the heart and the emotion and the passion, but then you also have the practical commitment, where there's actual action that goes into the relationship, where there's the care that is demonstrated in real ways, in concrete ways. And I said, maybe we as an Adventist church could learn from you about all the passion and the emotion and the excitement that you have about Jesus. But we feel like we have something to contribute, and that is that, we take God seriously at His word. If He says do something, we do it. We're in that. Well, I had made that testimony to these kids. So anyway, I'm flying around on my mountain bike, a few days later. I come flying around. There were many, many fire break roads there, and I run into a group of hikers. And guess who the hikers are? They're the same group of Pentecostal kids out hiking together. And I almost run right into them, and I'm like, oh, wow, it's you guys. I said, we've got to watch out. There's a mother bear right around the bend up there on the mountain. And they paid no attention to my story about a mother bear. All they said to me is, hey, it's Saturday morning. Aren't you supposed to be in church? I was like, well, I'm taking some time alone with the Lord, and I didn't really know what to say to them. And in my mind, ringing in my ears was what I had said to them when I was at their Bible study the week before, about we take God seriously. If He says do something, we do it, And so then I rode on from them. I just couldn't help but notice, of all the trails these guys were hiking on, it was the trail I was biking on. And of all the moments to be run off the mountain by a mother bear, it would be the one time that I was skipping church. And it just was so obvious to me. God has a way of getting all of our attention. But I knew that God did that. And I got his point. And so as I'm riding through the cornfields back to the university at the base of the mountain, I was like, okay, Lord, all right, I'll be faithful and go to church because you have shown me it's important to you. But I will let you know when I go to church that I'm doing this for you. I'm not doing this for the people. Because sometimes, frankly, the people bug me. So I was honest with God. And so that became my own personal commitment. In Hebrews, there's a scripture that says, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as is the pattern of some, especially as you see the day approaching. So as we see the chaos in the world pick up, maybe that we have more and more excuses why we don't need to go to church. Because it gets harder and harder to go to church. But here in Hebrews, it said, especially as we see the day approaching. So I always think of that mother bear that I didn't stick around to look at when I think of not feeling like I want to go to church. And I think, meeting the crusty old saints can't be as bad as meeting a mother bear on the mountain. So, anyway, I have no such feelings about you. I'm so glad to be here this morning. But on the off chance that there may come a day that any one of us just doesn't feel it and they don't feel like going to church, maybe you can remember the mother bear chasing up the mountain.